The first time I saw my new home, it wasn't the lake or the pine trees that hit me. It was 3 pickup trucks parked sideways across my gate like a makeshift roadblock. A woman in a blazer stepped out, slapped a clipboard against her palm, and said, "Homeowners Association, you've got 48 hours to pay what you owe, or you don't get in." And when I told her calmly that I owned the place now, she smiled like she'd been waiting for that line all day. I'd just bought a bankrupt lakeside ranch at auction, the kind of property people dream about but never think they'll actually land. I wasn't rich. I was careful and tired, and I needed something that felt like a reset. The deed was filed. The title company signed off. Money-wired keys in my pocket today was supposed to be simple. The woman introduced herself like she was reading a script. "Brenda Collins, HOA President," she said, tapping her name badge like it was a badge of authority. Behind her was a guy built like a bouncer. Troy Maddox, arms crossed, jaw tight, staring at my windshield like he wanted to crack it. A second woman, Sandra Pike, hovered near the driver's side window phone, out already recording. When I raised my phone to take a picture of the trucks blocking my gate, she snapped, "No photos. Private HOA matter." Private. While blocking a driveway on my property. In broad daylight. Brenda flipped her clipboard toward me without letting me touch it. "You've got liens," she said like she was announcing the weather. "Back dues, penalties, legal fees. 47,000 and change." I actually laughed because it was either laugh or start yelling, and I was trying not to give them the reaction they wanted. "Show me the lien number," I said. "County filing. Anything with a stamp." Brenda's smile stayed glued on. "You'll get an email. The Homeowners Association doesn't need your permission to enforce its rules." Troy leaned forward a half step like that was his cue, and Sandra's camera followed my face, hunting for a crack. I pointed at the gate. "Move your trucks." Brenda shook her head. "Not until we're paid, or until you sign acknowledging HOA jurisdiction. We can confiscate access until compliance." Confiscate access. That phrase landed weird, like someone using fancy words to cover the fact they didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't argue in circles. I put the car in reverse, slow and steady, and I left, because every instinct I had was telling me the goal wasn't rules, it was pressure. As I drove back down the dirt road, I caught a glimpse of their HOA magnets on the doors. Cheap crooked, like they'd been slapped on 5 minutes before I arrived. I ended up at a motel 20 minutes away, sitting on the edge of a stiff bed staring at the ceiling fan like it was going to give me answers. My stuff was still in my car, my new place was behind a gate I couldn't reach, and 3 strangers were acting like they owned my life. That's the part people don't understand, how fast your brain starts doing math you never asked it to do. Because 47 grand is insane. But so is losing a property you just emptied your savings to buy. And for about 5 minutes in that motel room, I felt the weight of it press down hard enough to steal my breath. Not am I a bad person? Not drama. Just the cold, practical thought. What if something in the paperwork didn't transfer clean? What if someone missed a lien? What if I walked into a mess? So I did the only thing that calms me down when my blood gets hot. I opened my laptop, and I started verifying everything line by line like my life depended on it. Because in a way it did. At 11:07 p.m., Brenda's email hit my inbox. 3 attachments, a lien. Notice a demand letter and a PDF of HOA bylaws, and the moment I opened them, my stomach stopped doing flips, because they weren't just aggressive, they were sloppy. The lien notice didn't have a county file number, no recorder stamp, no official header that matched anything I'd ever seen. Just a big, bold total, a deadline, and a signature line that looked like it came from a template. The demand letter was worse. It was signed by an attorney named Miles Hart, threatening me with trespass charges if I entered HOA-controlled property and telling me to wire payment to some random LLC with a bank account out of state. If you've ever dealt with real legal mail, you know the difference instantly. This thing read like someone cosplaying a lawsuit. Then I opened the bylaws and I actually whispered, "No way." The document referenced a subdivision phase that didn't exist when my ranch was built. And buried in the dates, it claimed the Homeowners Association had been formed before the neighborhood even had a recorded plat. That wasn't a mistake. That was a fake. And the fear in my chest didn't vanish. It transformed into something sharper. At sunrise, I drove straight to the county recorder's office. I didn't call first. I didn't email. I didn't wait because I could already feel how this scam worked. Keep you isolated, keep you rushed, keep you doubting your own timeline. I paid for certified copies like I was buying armor. The clerk pulled up my parcel and scrolled bored like this was just another Tuesday. No liens, she said flat. Title's clean. I asked her twice, not because I didn't believe her, but because I wanted to hear it a second time just to let it sink in. Now I had two choices. I could go back and start a screaming match at my gate, or I could build a case so tight they couldn't wriggle out of it. So I did what every Karen hates most: quiet documentation. That afternoon I started asking questions around the area, careful, casual, not letting on how deep it was getting. And that's when I met Maria Lopez, who looked like she'd been carrying this story in her chest for a long time. She listened to me for 30 seconds and said, "It's them. They did it to me." Maria told me she wired money first to stop the harassment, then more because the threats kept evolving. Late-night notices, legal fees, emergency assessments, each one designed to feel urgent and official. She finally sold the place just to escape, and she said that word like it tasted bitter: escape. A day later, I found Jason Reed. He didn't want to talk at first, kept glancing over his shoulder like the trucks were going to roll up again. But he handed me a folder of printed emails, and his hands were shaking just slightly when he did it. Then, like a movie scene I didn't ask for, I got a text from an unknown number. "You're dealing with Brenda Collins. I used to be treasurer. They pushed me out. I have proof." The name at the end, Caleb Owens. We met near the lake, away from houses where voices don't carry. Caleb didn't make speeches. He just opened a thick folder and slid it across the hood of his car like he was done protecting people who didn't deserve it. Inside were spreadsheets, emails, screenshots, plans, targets, and wire receipts that all pointed to the same ugly truth. They weren't enforcing rules, they were running a pipeline. They specifically hunted new buyers, people coming in through auctions, probate, messy transitions, anyone likely to be stressed, time-crunched and desperate to make it go away. When I added up what Caleb showed me, I felt my jaw tighten so hard it hurt. This wasn't a petty neighborhood feud. This was organized, repeated, and profitable. I filed a complaint with the state attorney general's office the same day. I walked into the sheriff's department with a stack of documents and an expression that said, "Please don't dismiss me as a homeowner being dramatic." The deputy's face stayed neutral until I showed him the fake lien, then the wire instructions, then the attorney letter. He leaned back, exhaled through his nose, and said, "Okay, not maybe. Not we'll see. Just okay," like a switch had flipped from annoyance to attention. We set a plan that felt surreal, even saying out loud. I texted Brenda. I told her I was willing to work something out and that I'd meet at the ranch gate with partial payment cashier's check, whatever made her feel safe. I could almost hear her smile through the phone when she responded fast. Good decision. When I pulled up to my gate that evening, my heart was beating hard enough that I could feel it in my fingertips. I had a recorder running my paperwork ready and a deputy positioned out of sight where he could see everything. I kept my face calm because the only way to beat people like this is to let them keep talking. Brenda arrived first like she was making an entrance. Troy and Sandra were right behind her trucks, rolling into place like they'd rehearsed the angles. And then the final piece walked up Miles Hart, the attorney, in a crisp suit, carrying a folder like he was starring in his own courtroom drama. He didn't introduce himself. He just said, "You're trespassing on Homeowners Association controlled access." I held up my certified deed. "This is my property. Show me where my parcel falls under your CC&Rs. He paused, just a fraction too long. Brenda snapped, "Don't play games, Ethan. Sign the acknowledgement and we'll remove the blockade." I looked at the paper. It wasn't just acknowledging dues, it was surrendering rights. And that's when I knew exactly what the endgame was. I asked evenly, "So you know there's no lien filed with the county, but you're still demanding payment?" Miles' eyes hardened. "You're making this difficult." Troy stepped closer. Sandra's phone lifted higher, and Brenda said the quiet part out loud. "We do this the easy way, or we make sure you never get comfortable here." I nodded slowly like I was considering it. Then I said, "Okay, one question. What's your bar number?" "Miles?" His mouth opened. and nothing came out. The deputies' lights hit the dirt road like lightning. Red and blue washed over the gate, the trucks their faces turning their confident little performance into a spotlight they didn't control anymore. Brenda's expression broke first like a mask cracking down the middle. The sheriff stepped forward and asked Miles the same question again, calm as a metronome. "Are you a licensed attorney?" Miles tried to talk his way around it, but the words sounded thin in the open air, and the cuffs sounded heavy when they clicked shut. Brenda started shouting about jurisdiction, about authority, about HOA rights like volume could rewrite the county records. Sandra lowered her phone suddenly, very interested in the ground. Troy's arms dropped to his sides, his confidence leaking out in real time. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just stood there at my own gate watching them get separated, read their rights, and loaded into the back of a car because the only thing I wanted in that moment was the sound of those trucks moving away from my property. As the last vehicle rolled out, Miles twisted his head and hissed, "You think this ends here?" And maybe it didn't. Maybe there were more names, more accounts, more victims. But right then, right at my gate, the game they'd been running snapped in half. Never pay fear, verify facts, and make the bullies explain themselves in the light.